Hello and welcome once again. This is Jennifer McGuire and I hope you're having a good week. So today I'm going to take one stamp set and make a bunch of backgrounds and then turn them into a bunch of simple cards. Now the stamp set that I'm using for the backgrounds is a layering stamp set. And instead of just stamping them with inks, I decided to do layered heat embossing. This creates a bold look that looks even great on colored or dark cardstocks. Now, I have some tips to share along the way, and I'm hoping that you'll give this technique a try because it's a great way to get more out of your embossing powders. I used a bunch of colored embossing powders, but keep in mind you can layer your silvers, your golds, your whites, or your blacks, your basic colors, and create really classic looks. The stamp set that I'm using is new, and it's exclusive to Simon Says Stamp. It was designed by Altenew and it's part of Stmp, so this is for a limited time and limited quantities. This is the Botanical Motifs, and I just really like the artsy look of this and thought it would be perfect for this technique. This particular set is very easy to layer and very forgiving, but you could definitely do this technique with any layering stamp set that you may have. Now I will be using my MISTI stamping tool today because I'm making a bunch of backgrounds at once, but you can use an acrylic block if you prefer. I also will tell you the specific colors of cardstock that I use because I think all of these options are great for bold, colorful backgrounds. The first that I'm using is My Favorite Things Steel Gray Cardstock. This is the perfect dark gray cardstock, and it's a nice option instead of using black. Now I'm stamping my image with VersaMark Ink, and I'm starting with one of the first layers of the large flower. Notice that I'm stamping at the top, rotating it, and stamping it again. This will save me a lot of time in covering this background. I'm adding a light pink embossing powder, and then I will set it aside and move on to my next color of cardstock, which I will stamp and add the embossing powder to. Then I'll go back and heat set them all at once. By waiting and doing all the heat setting at one time, you save a lot of time. Next up, we have black cardstock. The darkest, blackest cardstock that I've ever used is the Hero Arts Pitch Black cardstock. It's significantly darker than any other I've tried. So I highly recommend that if you're looking for a black background. And these bold colors will definitely stand out against the black. Now, if you're looking for a lighter gray cardstock that works great with bold colors heat embossed on top, I would recommend the Gina K Soft Stone cardstock. Now, this isn't super light like the Simon Says Stamp Fog or the Gina K Whisper, but it's more of a light to medium gray, and I find it's perfect. It's a nice, cool color, and it looks great with the bold colors added on top. Here we have Hero Arts Sand cardstock, which is a nice, soft craft cardstock that's heavyweight. You can also use Neenah Desert Storm, but I have that in a lighter weight cardstock and I much prefer the heavier weight. This is nice and smooth and again looks really great with bold colors added on top. I think the more neutral colors are a great alternative to white when you're using bold colors and kind of pulls everything together. And last but not least, I thought I would do a few with white cardstock. I always use Neenah Classic Crest Solar White in the 110 pound because it's smooth, perfect for stamping, and gives great results with coloring. Keep in mind this colorful layered heat embossing would work on any color cardstock. I think it would even look great on vellum, but today I decided to stick with these basic kind of neutral colors of cardstock. Now that I have stamped and added the powder for the first layer on all of my card panels, I'm going to go ahead and heat set them all at once. It's much faster to do them all at once because your heat gun will be good and hot, and you just move from one to the other very quickly. Okay, now that I've done the first portion of this flower, it's time to move on to the second portion, which I can easily line up and continue my stamping with the MISTI stamping tool. Now I will say when you're doing colored heat embossing, it's extremely important to use an anti-static powder tool each time because those little colors of granules of embossing powder can get everywhere and make for a mess. So be sure to use an anti-static powder tool. I've been liking the one that's the little bag. I find that it's easy to get the product out and make sure you have good coverage. So I'll go through each of these, and on this time I'm heat embossing with a little bit darker color, something that's a little brighter. I will link to the specific colors of embossing powder that I use below, but some of these are kind of old. I would encourage you to try whatever embossing powders you have, but this layered embossing really looks best if you use opaque embossing powders. So make sure you're using colored or metallics that are opaque. Now in each case here, I'm going ahead and heat setting it just so you could see the layering effect on each of the colors. Normally, again, I would wait and do all the heat setting at once. So you can see how these bright colors really stand out against the different color cardstock backgrounds. And I think this is something that we forget to do. Colored embossing powders are pretty inexpensive and something that you can have for a long time. A little goes a long way. So I think it's good to break them out and do some fun layered embossing using them on our colored cardstocks. Now I'm going to add some leaf images so I can do multiple images at once. Now the reason I'm doing colored embossing instead of stamping is because I can do colored cardstock. The opaque embossing powder doesn't allow the color cardstock to show through, whereas inks would. Another fun thing about using colored embossing powder for your stamp layering is you can layer darker colors on top of light or lighter colors on top of dark. It really doesn't matter, whereas with inks, the darker colors are going to obviously block out the lighter colors. So I can continue to add layers to these flowers. Now this took me a couple hours, but I made, I think, 15 or 16 different backgrounds at the same time. So I ended up with 16 backgrounds, all with the stamping covering the whole panel. And then I created simple cards from them in the end. So it took me about 2.5 hours to make 16 cards is what I did. So for me, that is really, really fast. 8 cards an hour, super fast. Okay, so now I'm just going to start working my way out and filling up the background. I find that if I do this, I can quickly fill the background. You can see how it's starting to fill up very quickly. And I just continue until the entire piece is covered. I'd mentioned that I will link the specific colors of embossing powder that I use below. But if you're looking to build up your embossing powder collection, I would recommend embossing powders from Ranger. They make high quality products. Or from Wow Embossing. The Wow Embossing powders are in smaller containers, so the price point is a bit lower. So here are some of the backgrounds that I ended up with. I love how, depending on what color cardstock I used, I get a different look, even though all of the embossing is the same. Now keep in mind here you can do a lot of things to these backgrounds. You could stamp on top of these with regular ink, and the embossing would resist the ink, and you would just end up with stamping on the background. You could also use an ink blending tool and ink to apply a bit of color around the flowers. There are many things you can do because that heat embossing will resist a lot of the ink that you put on top. Now I decided not to do any of those additional techniques because I was happy with the backgrounds as is, but you do have that option. And take a close-up look at these. Check out that beautiful layering that you get. You get true color because you're using embossing instead of ink. And you get that texture. I especially like the green embossing powders layered together on the leaves. Okay, so now that I have all of these backgrounds, I made a bunch of cards and I thought I'd share some of them with you here. I'll also share a few tips along the way. Now this is one of my favorites here where I used these Pinkfresh Kelly Alpha Lowercase dies. I am in love with the style of these dies. You can see each is almost 1.5 inches tall. And they have these little details cut out of them, and I thought it'd be fun to add these to our colorful backgrounds. So I die cut H and I both 4 times from black cardstock. From one of each of these letters, I kept the little detail pieces in place. And I took a piece of tape and put it on the back to make sure those little detail pieces stayed in place. So you can see how I'm just using some micropore tape to hold it on the back, but you could use any kind of tape for this. Now I'm going to pop out the little detail pieces from the other H's and I's. I will then glue those on top of the bottom one. So what this will do is create a dimensional high, and there'll be little details indented on each of the letters. You could have popped all the little details out, but by keeping them in the bottom layer, you get that fun look of dimension. So I glued those HI die cuts on top of a die cut vellum circle, and then I added a Simon Says Stamp sentiment strip right on top that says, "I am blessed to know you." So here you can see the little details that are kind of cut away from the high die cuts. I like the pop of black against the colorful background. Here's another using those same alphabet dies, but this time in white against the dark gray background. By putting a piece of vellum behind our die cut sentiments, it kind of drowns out the busy background so that the focus will be on the sentiments. I like to use a platinum vellum. It has some shimmer to it, but any vellum would work for that. I again use the Simon Says Stamp sentiment strips for the I Love You. These are pre-printed sentiment strips, and you just cut out the ones you want, and I use them a lot in this video. Okay, this next design is kind of my go-to design when I have a background that I don't want to cover up too much. I just cut a strip of vellum to whatever width I need it, and I just wrap it around my background. And I like to do it at an angle. I think that's kind of fun. And I fold it to the back and then just glue it there. I then trim off any of the excess and then add it onto a note card. This kind of gives you a spot where your sentiment can stand out. This time I used the Simon Says Stamp Bold Thanks die. I cut this 3 times from white cardstock and glued them together for dimension. That helps to make your sentiment stand out against a busy background. I also created a little sentiment strip to fit underneath that. Now this sentiment that says, "For your kindness," is from this Pink and Main Grateful Greetings stamp set. I really like all the sentiments here that can be teamed up with the message "thank you" or "thanks." So you can team it up with the stamps on here or the die cuts as I did here. I also put additional strips behind the "For your kindness," so it had dimension too and stood up from our background. I did also add a few iridescent gemstones here and there on the background, just so there would be a little bit of sparkle as you tilted it in the light. Okay, my next example is very simple also, but shows another way to make your sentiment stand out against a busy background. In this case, I die cut the thanks 3 times from the Hero Arts Pitch Black cardstock and glued them together. I then covered the stacked die cuts with my Tonic Aqua Shimmer pen, which adds a bit of sparkle, and then a layer of glossy accents from Ranger. That adds that shine and the thick dimension. That allows the thanks to stand out even more. I also like that the shine on the thanks matches the shine on the embossing that we have on our background. Now the stamped sentiment under our die cut thanks is from the Simon Says Stamp Thankful Flowers stamp set. This is such a gorgeous set. I like the bold thank you sentiments, but also the smaller ones that can be used kind of as a sub sentiment or to stamp inside of your card. I also use this stamp set on this next very simple card. I just stamped thank you with black ink onto a die cut circle and added a few gems. This is super simple, but shows that if you create some fun, colorful backgrounds, you don't need to do much else with your card. In fact, I think this one's a favorite of mine because I really like the bold colored embossing against that steel gray background. Okay, my next few cards feature the Studio Katia Autumn Border die set. Now the dies on the right, they actually coordinate with a stamp set from Studio Katia, but I'm using the thanks and the bless that are included in that die set. I really like the size and style of these. So on my first example, I use blessed. I die cut it twice from white cardstock and once from black and glued those together. I like the white peeking out from the sides of the black die cut. I added that onto a vellum cardstock strip, and this time I made my note card out of black cardstock. So I have a white cardstock piece glued inside to write my sentiment. Underneath the word blessed, I again used a Simon Says Stamp sentiment strip. Those make it super easy to create a quick and simple sentiment. And by the way, I have a few of these backgrounds left over. I keep them in a drawer, and then whenever I have a specific occasion I need a card for, I have backgrounds ready, and all I have to do is add a sentiment, such as wedding or sympathy or birthday, whatever I need. So I have about 8 or 10 cards made already, but 6 or so backgrounds left over for future cards. Here's another super quick one. I used the thanks die this time. Die cut it 3 times from white cardstock and glued them together. Added it to a vellum circle and then added a Simon Says Stamp sentiment strip. So this one has the bold black background in contrast with the softer look of doing the colored embossing on the craft color cardstock like I did here. I think this is my other favorite here. I used a Hero Arts rounded rectangle die to create this like label shape. I added the thanks die cut, and then I stamped You Make My Heart Happy underneath, and that is from the Pink and Main stamp set that I showed you earlier. This is another go-to design for me when I do some sort of technique background, something simple coming in from that bottom right corner. And last but not least, we have one of the soft stone backgrounds at light gray. In this case, I cut 2 gaps in the background and added it with foam tape to the note card. And then I stamped Hello Friend and Love You into the gaps. Those sentiments are in that same Altenew stamp set. Okay, so there you have a bunch of quick and easy examples using a fun colored embossed background. It's really fun to make a bunch of backgrounds at once and then just make a bunch of card examples at the same time. If you're interested in the supplies, they are linked below in my YouTube description, and there are a couple other videos in the middle here showing similar techniques. Thank you once again for spending this time with me today. I always appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful week.